So today, we have two sessions or modules in this journey of results-based management. You know, everything that we discuss is about helping us to focus on results. You know, right from the beginning, when we introduced the concepts, discussed the different issues in terms of indicators, the monitoring and evaluation tools, project monitoring, the reporting, the plan of M&E, baseline studies that we did the other week before last week, and now today we'll go again into the heart of this course to talk about project evaluations, what that entails, and then we'll later talk about risk management, which is, I think, a very important concept that often is ignored, and yet it's realized too late that it should have been handled at the beginning. We seem to do it very easily and talk about it, the risks in the in the monitoring and evaluation framework, including the logical framework, but we hardly able to actualize and deal with it during active project management. So let's take it away and now look at project evaluations. And I don't know, brother, shall we proceed, or you have some announcements to make?
You can just proceed.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, I'm very aware that as project practitioners, these are things we do and talk about all the time. And I'm also aware that I might not be making any new information available to you. The only perhaps interesting part is that we have the opportunity to share our experiences, and maybe, which is also exciting, we have opportunity to clarify some of the misconceptions that we seem to portray when handling either colleagues who do evaluations or even outsiders who do evaluations. So I am fully aware that this is something that cannot be said to be new, but I am also aware many times we struggle either within the team or within the programs or projects, what some things portend or mean on matters evaluation. So this is perhaps where we come in and bring some clarity so that you end up to be a better project evaluator or somebody who handles people who are handling project evaluation activities. So by the end of this lesson or module, we will try and perhaps just create that clarity, as I said, not perhaps new. What do we mean by project evaluation? And what are the types of evaluations that we probably can do or are doing? We'll also understand in the process of carrying out an evaluation, how do you do that? I know some of us engage people to come and do it. It's just good to understand what they come to do. And there is also a criteria or basis of doing an evaluation. There are certain aspects or lenses, criteria that one must focus on when you want to do an evaluation. And this process is about questions. Okay. When you are doing an evaluation, you actually simply ask questions. So we'll try and see how, and I think that's perhaps an area that might draw interesting because evaluation questions are evaluation questions, and therefore they have to be so. They must be different from other types of questions. We have also a matrix that can help us deal with the evaluation, which is about having criteria, putting in a table form, and be able to compare and contrast through weighting. And more importantly, the evaluation reports. Yeah, what does an evaluation report look like? I remember in one of the previous modules, we talked about reporting and talked about the importance and also the techniques of doing reports. But this time now, with that in our knowledge, we will be focusing on evaluation reports. Now, as an introduction, all of us here on this wall, as we have a conversation, uh, do carry out project evaluations, either directly or indirectly. And if you are a project manager, then project evaluation will help you to critique your goals, objectives, and outcomes, because those are the fulcrums or the tenets of any project. Now, evaluation, by the way, compared to monitoring, it's very, very insightful. It's and that's why a lot of people do easily do monitoring and not evaluation. Evaluation has a tweak to it that brings in insights that are ordinarily not brought out by monitoring. Because monitoring is just about looking and saying what you are seeing. But evaluation is just seeing beyond, you know, or reading in between the lines of monitoring, what everything else means. So it's about insights. And those insights need to help improve um, the performance. And I think in practical terms, a lot of people do more monitoring and even think that they're also evaluating. But serious evaluation is done probably at the end or post project implementation. But there is need to check in between before you conclude a project. You need to do some evaluation to check on how you are doing in terms of outcome, in terms of expected impact. Okay, and that's where the difference comes in. Otherwise, sometimes people are unable to distinguish between M&E during project implementation. But one of the perhaps key things which project evaluation looks at is to try and learn from efficiency, because evaluation speaks to efficiency, which is very important in project management as it talks directly to the use of resources, the inputs and the comparison of the inputs and outputs. So in a way, a project evaluation really is an approach that helps us, to look at success and how our projects or programs affect the people they are meant to serve. Yeah. And therefore, it's really an evaluation that targets the process and the results. Okay. And as an assessment, it therefore makes it possible for management to make certain adjustments and also spot what you call certain insights, uh, within the project audience or beneficiaries, and immediately or within the same framework, organize efforts that can improve the situation. So evaluation is about judging. No, judging is beyond what you just see. It's about appraising, determining the extent to which things are happening, determining the worth of what, is it worth it? Is it, efficiency? Is it worth it to do what you're doing? The value or the quality that decisions are being made in order to make progress of the project to be more effective. So, in simple terms, one will say when you are doing an evaluation, you are trying to be live to relevance, live to effectiveness, efficiency, sustainability, and we'll see this shortly, and also the impact. So these are things that are not really focused on when we are not doing monitoring. And I think getting to be very familiar with these aspects makes the evaluation be what it's supposed to be. I just need to confirm whether you are seeing my presentation. Can someone confirm?
Yes.
It's
Okay.
seen, yes, it's seen.
Yeah, good. Because sometimes in these digital conversations, people might think you're just trying to explain something, and yet it makes it easier when um, people can see what you are trying to explain. So, having said that, maybe it's a time now to quickly engage. Has this sort of anything that seems not to be clear about what, before we engage on the process of evaluating, does the concept um, look to be clear now? Can we draw the line between monitoring and evaluation based on this short presentation? Tabitha?
Come up again.
I'm asking whether this concept of project evaluation is clear and it speaks to what you already know about evaluations.
Yes. For me, it's
Uh,
clear.
how far have you been involved in evaluations yourself? You do it directly or you work with a team that is involved in it?
No, I work with the team.
Okay.
Yeah.
And has it always been clear for you the line between monitoring and evaluation?
So far, I can say we are trying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else with an experience?
So,
Mutiso?
Daktari,
Yes, Gerald, yes.
can we simply say like we can do evaluation at the mid and at the end of the project, isn't it?
In
The
fact, like you
summative,
see,
huh?
yeah, you're right. Like you'll see shortly,
Mm,
we have different types of evaluations,
yeah.
and mainly it's about when they are done. In fact, there is an evaluation that you do before the project starts, what we call formative evaluation. So it's done just anywhere. You remember the concept of the project cycle
Yeah, yeah.
from the initiation up to the
The,
closure.
mm,
Yeah, evaluation can be done at any spot along that cycle. So you're right. It can be done in the middle, at the start, just before the end, and even after the end.
okay.
Yeah, that means that probably we just need now to move to the next stage and talk about the types of the types of evaluation, project evaluation. Now, in different textbooks, in different places, you may have different names. All right. Only that it just depends, and the most important thing is when do you do it. That's what it defines what type of evaluation it is. So uh, different, but the explanation will normally be the same. Okay. I have decided that we focus on the timing and look at the different types, which are various in form. The very first one is the pre-project evaluation. Pre means before even the project begins to be implemented. All right. In some places they'll call it a feasibility study. So a feasibility study is an evaluation of some sort, which helps in bringing out certain aspects that need to be considered during project planning. Pre-evaluation also will always ensure that the stakeholders are understood, yeah, in terms of what is the problem, why is this project important, all right, so that they can support the project. And in the pre-project evaluation or feasibility study, you really want to look at what is it that might make the project not succeed. Right? What are the challenges that needs to be evaluated and understood and perhaps be planned for in advance? In other words, a pre-feasibility study or a project evaluation simply helps us to assess the likelihood of success of the project to give us outcomes that we desire. Yeah, so that's one type of evaluation. And I know a lot of times this is done in house, but in many ways, this is done also usually by the donors before the launch of the project. They may use, because perhaps the team will not be in place yet, they might use external consultants, although the externality to it also is important for purposes of objectivity. The second one is ongoing evaluation, and this one is where now you come up with an evaluation, depending sometimes if there are problems that start emerging, you can decide to do an evaluation, meaning the project is ongoing, but then you just do an evaluation to understand a certain aspects. Okay. At the beginning of a project, there will usually be a matrix that shows different indicators, right? And that matrix is related to the logical framework, right? So you want to just follow the proposed indicators and check their progress and how they are conforming with the objectives. So you just want to remain sure and may that what you are doing is relevant to the outcome. It's taken as where you want to be. Okay, and slightly that's different from monitoring. Monitoring is just checking and ensuring that what you planned is being done. That's the difference. But with the evaluation, you are conscious about the direction the project is taking. You want to confirm that you are still within, you're still within the planned objectives. And you do that, you remember we spent some time on the indicators. So you look at the indicators and you measure them. So that based on indicators, you can tell if the project is in the right direction. Yeah. Monitoring does not tell you the direction. It just simply tells you of progress. You might even be going in the wrong direction, but it just tells you there's progress. Evaluation will just make sure that you focus and understand and confirm, I think that's a better word, that you are on the right track. Yeah. And that's why decisions made with that kind of evaluation are called educated decisions that are made based on evidence. Okay. And they may sometimes lead to, for example, taking corrective action. And in the worst of all, the project may be terminated. Very unlikely, but it has happened, right? If for whatever reason things have gone wrong, and the donor wants to use a basis of terminating the project, they will do that. They'll come and do an evaluation just to ensure that you're on the right track. I have some of you may have witnessed a situation where donors terminate the progress of a project after an evaluation. That evaluation, what it has done is to confirm, and sometimes you wonder, you seem to have been doing well, maybe based on your monitoring observations, but the evaluation will tweak it to examine and assess where the project is going in terms of objectives. Then post, before you go to post, in the ongoing evaluation, there is also what we call mid-term. Okay. Now, mid-term, which is also very, very usually draws a lot of experience. I mean, a lot of interest from the board, on the part of the donors, is where if a program is a 2-year program, a 4-year program, then midway will be 2 years. You do a mid-term evaluation, and in project management, you may think everything's going on very well based on your monitoring. You see reports coming in, people are busy, but you might just be going the wrong direction. Yeah. So at midterm, it doesn't matter whether things are wrong or right. Just do it and confirm that one, you're in the right direction, and perhaps you might need to make certain decisions that may reinforce the impact that you are seeking to attain at the end of the project. So it's good practice to not to wait until when the project is over, and then now you do an evaluation. And in fact, a mid-term is a good way of bringing up reasons for even extension. You have had sometimes projects are extended because of what has been found out at the midterm review. Of course, in the worst case, a project may be closed. Yeah, and it's important for a manager of the program to be proactive, not to feel as if things are. If you think everything is fine, confirm it. There's nothing wrong with that. All right, but just to wait until when you are at the end of the program is being, in my view, naive, and it's not a very good project management practice. Now, post is now after. Post is when now the project has ceased implementation. You did your other evaluations in between and then before, or those that were necessary to be done. But now the project has been completed. You do that usually when even the project staff probably have left. That's usually done by the donor. All right. It checks on the results and how it has affected the beneficiaries, yeah, the success rate. Was it successful in terms of what was planned in form of aims and objectives? Then you assess the results, the impact, and to find out the impact is really what brings to the clarity of or the joy, if you will. Evaluating impact is what brings joy to what change the audience or the beneficiaries got, and it leads to now the learning. If it worked, why? And if it did not work, why not? Either way, it gives us lessons. Now, managers may discover areas of success during this process and perhaps help in getting to do similar projects in terms of what succeeded and what did not succeed to avoid repeating the same mistakes. Another type of evaluation is self-evaluation, and that has something to do with the people or the team members. Yeah, each of the team members have a job to do. They have a job description, and they're the ones who actually implement the project. So an opportunity for them to also evaluate their own self vis-a-vis their role in the project can be very important, because when a member of the team discovers weaknesses, all right, then they can be able to correct that, and that together with others, it provides a bigger success. And this also, of course, helps in identifying capacity gaps when members of the team can establish their weaknesses. One thing that I think, and I know most of you, and some of you are managers or even project officers, to have a self-evaluation and coming up with the gaps is what together as a team contributes to the bigger success. You know, and this is important to managers, if individual team members feel they feel they have gaps. If individual members in your team, and you know project teams are normally not big, if your team members have issues, if your team members are not delivering, you know, in projects, teamwork is very key, you know. So if there is a problem with the weakness with the members of the team, believe you me, you will not succeed in that project. Okay, so it's good, and some people do it every year, or even depending on the nature of the project, maybe 6 months. But be interested in knowing whether individually the project members feel prepared and have the capacity to do what they're supposed to do. External evaluation, this one is where now you bring in external participants. And the idea is really to try and bring in objectivity, you know, the consultants, to bring in objectivity and credibility also. You know, it's sometimes not easy to say that I've done this, but it's easier when you say a study by somebody found out that this is what you are doing. You create more confidence and credibility by getting somebody from outside the team to try and understand what has happened. More so when you are dealing with complicated programs. Yeah, So when you have many people who are interested in what you're doing, then it's best when you have an external review or consultant to do the evaluation. Maybe again, a quick one. Anyone with a comment on the different types? Has any one of you participated in any of this? Or which one appeared to be Gerald? You are here. Have you participated in any of these types of evaluations?
Yeah, did. The
Which
second
one did
one,
you? Uh-huh.
the ongoing what you call evaluation, like in 2010, in 2020,
Mm.
we're given money, what you call donation or yeah, some money
A
from a
grant.
donor, which
You're given
was
a grant.
intended to support CWDs, children with
Uh-huh.
disability, on the area
Mm.
of occupational and physiotherapy.
Yes.
Then the issue of COVID came in.
Yes.
So we did the evaluation on the effect of COVID to
Yeah.
CWDs. Then we
Oh, great.
realized offering what we call physio or occupational therapy to those children, it was not
Mm.
effective.
Yeah.
So we spoke to the donors and then we agreed instead of providing those services, so we could provide food packaging to CWDs. And
Mm.
so we changed the course. Instead of doing physiotherapy, then we are providing
Yeah.
food parcel to CWDs and also families, which was highly agreed and well appreciated by the beneficiaries and also other stakeholders. So when we wrote the report back to those donors, the
Mm.
donors said that we channel that money to support
Yeah.
food stuff to children with special needs because the impact was huge during COVID, especially to children with special needs.
I think that's an excellent example when it comes to ongoing evaluation. And I think you, Gerald, bring out this idea that you do that because you want to confirm whether the direction you are going is correct. You are doing physiotherapy, but you needed what you would call educated decisions as to whether to continue or change course. All right, and that perfectly fits very well in the ongoing evaluation. I mean, I think from Gerald's submission, we can see how evaluations can actually help management because they will have easily continued to do what they are if they felt if they in their own thinking physiotherapy was important in their own understanding, they will have continued to do that up to the end, and I think that will have been the end of that program, and there will have been no effect, no impact. Yeah, but thanks to evaluation, that course was changed, and it ended up going the right direction. So I think with the value of that can easily be seen from the testimony of Gerald. I think I would like us to proceed unless someone has a question.
How it
How
was
then do
did.
you, pardon?
So I have a question,
Hello?
Daktari.
Yes, please.
Yes, I'm asking like if we want to bring in an external M&E
Mm-hmm.
come and help in evaluating the program.
Mm-hmm.
Does he base his evaluation from the internal, like we have internal M&E? Does he have to inform you to make his decision following from what internal M&E has brought, or he will come to do his own? Then he will hand over to the management.
Thank you, Tiso. I want you to hold on that thought, because the question you're asking is where we are now due to go to. How do you do an evaluation? And I would like you to ask or bring up that question once I'm done with this second part of the module. I want us now to talk about the process. What are the steps that one takes when you want to do a project evaluation, whether internally or externally? But
Dr. Ali,
hello?
Dr. The first one, like what you call evaluation, prior
Yeah.
evaluation, is it the same with inception meeting?
It's yes, inception meeting, yes. Actually, inception meeting will be based on the findings of pre uh, uh, project evaluation. So it can be the basis of the inception meeting.
Okay.
Yeah. And as I said, this can also be called feasibility study. So you carry out a feasibility study, you come out with the issues that need to be dealt with, all right, and what some of the challenges might be, and then now you have that first meeting of inception. It's just the terminologies, but most of these things are the things you really just do. Stephen, can I move to the next one? Then I will still ask you to come back to that issue. Is that okay?
Okay.
Okay, great. Now, how do you carry out a project evaluation? You know, an evaluation must be seen um, as a unique or specialized activity that must be planned for, and I think that speaks to what Stephen was asking, must be planned for in advance. It's not something you just wake up and do, all right? So whether you do it internally or externally, this process kind of remains standard, okay? Um, and the very, very fast stage where one has to start when you want to engage in an evaluation is to create a plan, right? When you get an external consultant, and that's why some evaluation perhaps is best done by the external, because they will be able to separate it from the usual things. You see, if it's done internally, it's very hard, M&E internally, to separate the two functions. And in most cases, they are conflicted with the findings of the monitoring as insiders. And that's why a number of organizations choose outsiders to do the evaluation. So the evaluation will be done by, first of all, wanting to find out why is it necessary? Why do you want to do an evaluation? There will be those concerns that will be raised by the project management. And it's based on that goals and objectives will be set. Like in the case of was it Gerard, all right? The objective was to find out whether physiotherapy was the appropriate intervention, whether it was the right objective. Okay, and that's how I'm sure the evaluation was done. That we want to find out whether physiotherapy as an intervention is helping us to support or to give the targeted audience what they require. So you start with setting goals and objectives, and it's based on that you now come up with a plan. So you have the objective, you have the goals, then you come up with a structure of how you are going to come up with information that will help you make a decision on the objectives that you have set out to do. So you start with creating a plan, all right? In this plan, you decide, all right, like in the case of Gerald, if it was about the relevance of physiotherapy, then you also decide what assessment are you going to do. Then you decide tools and techniques. How are you going to collect the information about, in this case, the physiotherapy? And how are you going to analyze the information that you get so that you're able to make a conclusion? So that's a plan for you. Once you have done the plan, you identify the source of evaluation and get organized. What that means is that now you have the plan. The next thing is, where are you going to get the information that will help you make a decision on what you want to decide? All right. So that you must decide in advance. You don't decide when you are already collecting people information. You agree in advance, and if you're an external consultant, you'll discuss with the management, so that then, based on what they say, you make a decision. So you select people who are going to be interviewed, and also decide whether, depending on their goal, whether you're going to do what kind of information you're going to collect. All right. Are you going to do interview, for example, or what are you going to do? You must agree, you must decide. There are various ways of collecting information. Interview is one, okay? You can also do focused group discussions and other. So you make a decision in advance. Then, because usually evaluation, depending on the size of the program, you assign work. The people who go out to collect data must be assigned work and be supported to do so. Then once you have done that, you implement. You carry out the evaluation, okay? You get to go and collect the information that you want to collect. For example, if you are doing a pre-project evaluation, then you just simply focus on the objectives and the goals of the project. If it is a continuous evaluation, you are going to decide which areas you are going to focus on in terms of collecting information. Okay, and if it's post-evaluation again, you are probably going to focus on impact. So implementing evaluation is really going out based on the plan to collect the information. Then you analyze the information. You recall, this information is analyzed according to the original purpose and goal of the evaluation. In the case of Gerald, yeah, the information that was analyzed was to help them understand whether physiotherapy was effective or not. Was it relevant or not? Was it efficient or not? That's decided by looking at the data that will have been collected. Then now you do a report. Yeah, like you saw Gerald mention, they did a report, okay? And that report is to now help the team understand what the evaluation has come up with, and then discuss the next steps. Like in the case of Gerald, they changed and said we replace physiotherapy with the food aid. All right. So for them, that was the next steps. Okay. Later, I will tell you about the report, the format of the program. For now, just know that the report must be done in relation to the objectives of the evaluation. Okay. But later we'll discuss, I think at the end, we'll discuss what this report should contain. Yeah. Stephen, up to there, does it help you on, do you still have a question?
I think you have answered part of it.
Yes, what else is not clear to you?
because like myself, I do like internal
Okay.
evaluations.
Mm.
So the clarity that I was seeking is like when an external consultant comes in,
Comes in.
yes. Then when we
And,
invite an external consultant to come in, does he
mm.
base his evaluation from what I have, or he will do his own, then present it to us?
Now, when you've seen the stages or the steps are the same, eh?
Yes,
But there
yes.
was this second or third step where this, I think it was third, eh? No, second. Identify source of evaluation and get organized. Now, where you will get the information, one of them will be what already is happening. You get. So
Yes,
at the
yes.
second stage, the evaluator will decide that in this organization there is an evaluation officer. So one of the sources will be one to talk to you. You know, the external and most likely you'll be planning this anyway together because you're in the same area. But the first thing he will talk to you for you to explain what you've been doing, and also he'll ask for your reports, which
Okay.
he will review independently. Yeah, and in terms of
Yes.
in addition to now the reports and talking to you, he may also talk to the other colleagues. All right, depending on what they do, and of course he'll talk to the boss. Yeah, then now talk to the beneficiaries. You know, either through focus group discussion or a survey, whatever that he chooses to. It just depends on the scope. So to answer your question directly, you will become your reports on yourself will be part of the sources of information that he requires so that he analyzes that independently. And you know, in evaluation, there's what we call triangulation. Triangulation means what you say will be subjected to what your boss says and what your colleagues say and what the beneficiaries say. That's what makes evaluation a bit dynamic, because nothing is taken for evaluation. Means you are testing, by the way. So triangulation is um, the main function of evaluation, because you want to establish the truth or you want to confirm. And that's why sometimes people don't like evaluations, because especially those who perhaps might not be doing the right thing, they feel they may be discovered. But the nature of evaluation is such that information is collected from different sources and triangulated, interpreted, and therefore recommendations made.
Yeah, sure. Dr. I wanted to add.
Before JP, Stephen, are you rest easy now?
Yes, now I'm okay.
Oh, great. Thank you. Brother Paul?
Yes, I want to agree with you that, okay, whatever Stephen is asking, it can form part of the desk review for the person doing evaluation to look at, okay, what is there? What are some form of literature within the organization that can form the basis of the evaluation process? And also, I like the element of triangulation that you are talking about, because I
Yes.
think the focus areas of evaluation is usually to determine the efficiency of your intervention, the aspect of effectiveness, and also whether your intervention is geared towards sustainability, relevance of it. Is it geared towards the long-term impact, which is in your logic framework. And therefore, to get full information that will inform the opinion of the outcome and recommendations of the evaluation, triangulation is very key. Yeah, so I want to agree with that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Brother Paul. I think that's the essence, really, that these things come out clear, emerge, and they are easier to speak to our realities. So thanks, Paul, for that. Unless there's a burning question, in the interest of time, I want us to go to the next stage, which is just the criteria that, by the way, Brother Paul was alluding to. Yeah. What are the 6 areas that you want to look at in terms of an intervention and its result during the evaluation process? So we have these areas, like you've heard from Brother Paul. There's relevance, okay? There's coherence, okay? There's effectiveness, efficiency, impact, and sustainability. So those are the areas when you do and by the way, when an external exam, of course, these are things that the internal evaluator will do. But when you get an external one, they will have a conversation with the management, because the evaluation must be done to suit a certain objective, which the management will have flagged out. Or if it is the donor, then they will have said, we want you to check on this. So based on the conversation between the evaluator and those who the owners of the project, he or she will be able to say, I think in this particular case, these people want to know whether they're relevant, whether they're coherent, whether they're effective. Effectiveness is about taking the direction that is supposed to be taking. Efficiency, the resource use, impact. If the project is not over, you just measure the potential for impact and sustainability, the ability to continue after the project is complete. So at any one time, the evaluator must decide which of these are required. Like I think Gerald, which of these for you think was the evaluation focused on?
Pardon?
In your example of the ongoing evaluation,
Yeah.
which of these you think the evaluation was concentrated on?
Or the impact.
The impact.
Yeah.
And then also, I think you must also looked at effectiveness.
Yeah, it was the impact and the effectiveness of the intervention.
And probably relevance, and also relevance, maybe. Yeah. Now, when you do a mid-term review or end-term, by the way, we also have what we call end-term review. You look at all of them. If you got me to come to your project and you want to do a mid-term, all right, then irrespective of whatever it is, I want to find out about your relevance. I'll find out about your coherence. I'll find out about your effectiveness. Unless you specifically say you don't want. But for a mid-term is as compressive. The ones that are ongoing could be selective, like what you've heard Paul saying. But if it's a mid-term, that is standard. It will have to evaluate all of them. And any term will also have to evaluate all of them. But post mostly is impact, although they can also handle others, but it's mostly impact. Right. I think those are the 6 criteria. Now, questions that are asked. You remember we said you must collect information in stage 2 of the process. All right. Really, and those of you who have had experience, you know that evaluators just ask questions. Even if you went out for tea, they'll be asking you questions. And you know those questions, they'll have already developed them. And they will do that all the time. As long as the evaluator is around you, uh, be sure that all they'll do is to ask questions. All right. And these questions can be in different ways for focus groups, could be for individuals, whatever it is, could be for survey. All right. So evaluation questions are very important. A good evaluation, by the way, if ever you want to participate or get someone to get someone to do an evaluation, judge their capacity or their ability through the questions they have prepared to ask, because it's through those questions that they will be able to understand and advise you. That's what a consultant does, by the way, is to ask questions, get the information, analyze it, all right, and make recommendations, or conclusions, and then make recommendations. And that's where you come in. That's what you want anyway. So questions are very important, more so evaluation questions. They focus on data collection, all right? And there are questions that need to be answered by whoever that you want to talk to, stakeholders, all right? And through these questions, you can hear stories of what's going on. Evaluation is about what are people feeling, their stories. And thus, the evaluation questions need to be crafted properly so that you get the right information before you make that decision or advice. Now, one of the things that probably I would like to bring to your attention is how do you get to write or to get to ask the right questions. A good question for evaluation, one, must be informed by why the evaluation is being done. So questions must speak to the objective. Yeah. And if you notice, people who come to do evaluation don't ask, they'll ask other questions, but they are very clear on which questions they need to ask. And those questions must speak or stick to the evaluation of that particular exercise. Of course, an evaluator might engage you and ask you unnecessary questions, maybe just to calm you or to bring you to the mood. But there are specific questions that must speak directly to why, the purpose of the evaluation. It's also advised that the questions need to be compared or become, related to the interest of the stakeholders. Okay, so a project stakeholder selected the few can be used to ask the questions and confirm how relevant those questions are. So ensure that if, for example, you ask to ask questions about farming, all right, you need to find out whether the farmers are able to answer those questions. It could be directly or by people who work with them, like the project team members. So the stakeholders. Then when you are asking those questions, make them as open as possible so that you allow people to explain things the way they, yeah. So some questions can be closed, right? And then some questions, and for evaluation, they need to be open. so that people can express themselves. I've given an example there. An example of a closed question would be, did participants enjoy the program? That's a closed question. You know, it will give you either a yes or a no. But the same question can be put in an open-ended fashion. How do participants characterize their experience? You see? So you don't lock them out. There are those who will come out to feel it's good, and there are those who come out who might think it wasn't as good. Yeah. Evaluation questions are not survey questions. So survey questions are standard, you know. For example, a survey question would be, how satisfied are you with the timeliness of, for example, email from your support worker? But the evaluation question would be, to what extent are services delivered in a timely fashion? So the questions should be such that they are not looking for standardized answers. No. Evaluation questions may have multiple indicators. Okay. Because you know a lot of those questions may be coming in to look at the different indicators. Okay. And remember, we said earlier that evaluations employ triangulation as a methodology to understand what's going on. So you may have a question like, for example, evaluation question: to what extent is the program having a positive impact on families? To what extent is the program having a positive impact on families? So in there are various questions. I mean, indicators. There's the parents, the youth, and also an indicator on the number of hours spent together. How many evaluation questions? Again, this really it will depend. Okay. Although from practice, between 5 to 7 questions will do. But again, it just depends on the complexities. You know, programs are different. So the bigger, the more complicated it can be. We have had even sometimes questions going up to 10, depending on the nature of the objective, depending on what the management want to know. It will depend. If it is just like in the case of Gerald, they just wanted to know something about the physiotherapy. But if they want to know more about other things, then the questions will also be more. Now, once you have done the questions, you edit and edit. You don't, yeah. You see, most of the consultants who come to you, they talk to you, and if they have in the process of doing questions, they will normally check and change and change and change, so that you end up with better questions. In normal ways, if there's time, they will also do pilot, do mock interviews and then check how they are responded to. But again, really, evaluation cannot be done in a standard way. It just depends. I mean, if you are doing it in a secure place, for example, maybe a vulnerable place, it's not the same as doing it in a safe and a safe and stable place. So evaluation it's not easy to standardize it, but it's good to know the parameters in which it does take place. Evaluation reporting, yes. At the end of the evaluation, you must do a report, and that's very important. And most of the project evaluation reports do have specific areas like purpose, the scope, methodology, and data sources. All those and how they analyzed the findings and the conclusions. Yeah. Why is it important to do an evaluation report, especially I think was it Mutiso? You do evaluation reports for various reasons because they are supposed to help in management. So one of the reasons that makes the evaluation reports to be important is accountability. Okay, because through evaluation reports we can be able to know how accountable the team and all everybody's working in the project. So accountability is another one reason. Learning, we do reports so that people can learn from what we are doing. We also do the reports so that we can improve. Like in General's case, they improved and changed what they were doing. We also do reports so that we can communicate. Communication means you tell out the story, what you found out, communication, right? So what then are the components of an evaluation report? Usually there will be an executive summary. I'm sure I'll ask Gerald to tell us what the reports they do. There is an executive summary, introduction, background, the questions, you remember, the methodology, how you remember the process we discussed, the findings, the conclusions, and recommendations. Lessons learned also, limitations that may have affected the process, the references, especially those that have been used to inform the information, and the appendices, things that are important but perhaps can be consulted at different levels. Yeah. Right. Any share, Gerald, do you want to share anything about report writing or what you've just said about evaluation? Or indeed anyone else who have experience with the evaluation? Mutiso, do you normally write? Okay, before we go to Mutiso, Gerald, was there a report that was written before you in your ongoing project evaluation report? Was it written?
Yeah, it was written.
Okay.
Yeah.
And does it conform to some of, does it capture, maybe not one by one, but does it capture some of these areas? Like
Yeah,
the
it was
executive
similar.
summary,
Because we had the
introduction?
executive summary
Yes.
and then background of why you want to change course.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, so that was part of the background because there was an issue of lockdown. So we couldn't do what we were supposed to do. And most of the things were assistive device. So how can you provide the assistive device to a person who does not have access to food? So we're trying to out, should we provide wheelchair or should we provide food? So those are some of the background information we tried to put in. And at the same time, there was the issue of we're able to get external evaluator who also helped us to kind of give a comprehensive report, whatever we did, because we did our hours, which is internal, like Mutiso was saying, with the internal, also with the external evaluation, and two of them were combined and sent to the donor.
All right. So anybody with comments on the evaluation report and the questions? Yeah, I would like us to, in a few minutes, take a break, then we come for the last one. But before we do that, let's talk about challenges. I think Mutiso might find this familiar. Yeah, there are challenges in writing evaluation reports, and I think I've visited many organizations. They tend to be more easy writing monitoring reports, but I think evaluation reports appear to be generally challenging. Yeah, and it's just good to know them so that when you start doing that, you make sure that some of these things are dealt with. If you want to do a report, then you ensure that these challenges are mitigated or in some way. Okay. One of the main challenges of evaluation is limitation of data. You know, if you don't have good questions, you will not have data. Okay, and that's where the challenge is. A lot of people are not able to ask the right questions. And if you don't write the right question, you will not get the right information. And if you don't have the right information, you will not get the right findings. Without right findings, you will not make the right conclusions. Without right conclusions, you cannot make a recommendation. Yeah. You probably have had instances where an evaluation is done, you wait for a report forever. It could be related to data. The other one is disagreements. And that's why we said earlier, ensure that your questions are in tandem with the expectations of your stakeholders. All right. So if the stakeholders have disagreements, I've heard of situations where a report is written, the management agrees, but the donor doesn't agree. Yeah. So the person who writes the report must be able to reconcile the two. Yeah. Otherwise, if the stakeholders don't agree, then the report will obviously have problems. Technical writing, not everyone can write clearly and in a manner that can be understood. So writing skills sometimes is a problem. Um, it's why when you apply for a donor, when you apply for, I'm now talking as a consultant, when you apply for an evaluation, they'll ask you to submit copies of previous work. That's the idea, that's the reason. So that they understand whether you are someone who can write. And if you wrote, who did you write the report to? And is there any, can they confirm that the report was okay? Yeah. So technical writing, and that's why not anybody can become really an evaluator, an evaluation, you know. It's not just about speaking, it's also about writing. And perhaps to me, that's the most difficult, most critical, that you communicate in a manner that 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 can be understood. Time constraints, yes. A lot of evaluation work is done under rushy time. You know, sometimes you don't have enough time, and I don't know why it tends always to come in when there is, you know, you call your evaluations late, so you want a report like next week, next month. You know, it's like that always. So that's where now somebody with experience makes a difference. Otherwise, the report will take too long. Communication barriers, yeah, you know, barriers in terms of language. You know, if you have to engage, if you have to engage, if you have to engage stakeholders, maybe there are local people, so that can also make it difficult to understand. You go to ask questions to people who don't probably understand English or Swahili, and you have to go down to the local. So this some of the common challenges. Those who have been involved, I don't know whether you can speak to any one of them. Hello. Gerald, which of these you think stands out for you? A challenge of writing monitoring reports?
You mean when we are writing or now? Is it?
No, when you are writing a report, what are some of the challenges? I've mentioned a few. Which one of those you think you have experienced with the people who you have asked to do it, or which of those for you has been something you have gone through?
No, the issue was time.
Or time? That's
Time
always a problem.
was a challenge because like you wanted them to respond immediately so that we could have done whatever we wanted to do, but it took a little bit of time because they are not within Kenya, the donors, they are outside. Mm. And also there was the issue of back and forward, like you write something, they write back, and so forth. Mm. So the main issue for us was time.
Time, yeah. In fact, my advice would be when you engage someone to do some evaluation and consultancy, check with them whether those are issues. Excuse me. Just check with you directly or indirectly, because those will later come to affect. And I've been in that situation where you really wait for a report that doesn't come through. Yeah. Okay. Can we? I want to propose we take a break and then resume at 11:35 for the final part. Is that okay?
Yeah, I think that's okay.
That's okay. All right. Thank you so much. Let's take a break for 5 minutes. Let's be back at 35 past 11 for the final part of today. Thanks. Take water, maybe tea, whatever. Hello, welcome back. Hello, you can hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Thank you. So that's our topic, the last topic of today, risk management framework. Risk is a concept that now has informed project management. We simply, I think, always able to mention risks during planning. When you look at the logical framework, we talk about risks. But I think in many ways, it does not seem to actively inform decisions within projects. So I hope this conversation we have now will bring some clarity to some of the things that you do and probably begin to see your projects from a risk management point of view. So we will, in this particular module, first of all, bring to your attention about the risk identification. Yeah, what is it and how is it done? And how do you measure and assess the risks? Okay. And to that extent, how then do you mitigate against these risks after you've assessed and measured them? And then how do you report, yeah, on the progress of your risk management? And perhaps even more importantly, how does risk inform governance within project setup? Now, you cannot manage risks if you don't identify them. Yeah, and it's a process really, which involves documenting. You know, it means you look at your objectives of the program and single out what you think might make you not reach there. That's what you call risks. Because if you can imagine do that, you can guarantee more of your project success than when you remain aloof. When you don't deal with risks in a manner that informs your decisions, then you leave risks to chance. In other words, you leave your project to the process of good luck. Yeah. And like many people say, luck is not a strategy. If you believe in doing things so that you succeed through luck, that's not a strategy. Strategy is about decision making that is verifiable and can be validated. Okay. So it's okay, and that's the work of a manager and the team to actually look for the events that may prevent a project from achieving its goal. And that's the bottom line. Look out for those events, those issues, those factors that may make you, and think about them and plan for them. And that's what we are really going to be focused on. Sometimes risks can originate from within the project or without the project. So it's always good to see where the risk originates from. Is it within or without or outside the project? Yeah. And there are several disease situations for which you might need to identify risks. Okay. For example, if you want to support an investment decision, then look for risks. If you want to assess cost uncertainty, operational costs, yeah, which we do all the time in projects, you really must find out the risks. If you want to analyze multiple alternatives of doing something, then it means you must weigh the options by balancing the risk regimes. Or if you want to test a program before its acquisition, all right? Before you present a proposal, but you want to find out if it's to succeed before you are given the go ahead, then you find that you want to know what the risks are. So, how do you identify risks for a project? Number one, you can do document review. Okay. Yeah, you look at project files, you look at the plans. I mean, you can, as a manager, you can look at documents, look at monitoring reports, look at evaluation reports, look at progress reports, external reports, consultancy reports, audit. All those documentation can provide you with a good source of identifying a risk. So some of the documents within the project that can help us identify risks: the project plan or schedules, the charter, procurement plan, project scope statement, yeah, project costs estimates, the work breakdown structure, the activities that are being done according to the different objectives. When you look at those details, you probably can be able to fish out or identify the risks that may affect your project. Apart from documents, you can also brainstorm. You sit down and talk to each other, and it's a good one. Project team members, stakeholders, you sit down and brainstorm. Just ask people what they think the things that might help or might stop the project from succeeding. Yeah. You can also interview stakeholders directly and find out, have a one-on-one with the specific peoples, maybe key interview personnel, maybe government leaders, projects managers from other places, and it can be unstructured interview or structured depending on what exactly you want to find out. So you can do that through interview. SWOT analysis is a very common one. You look at the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and threats. That also can be a good way. It's done during project planning. It's also done during strategic planning. Okay, that can, by especially looking at the threats, the weaknesses, you can easily speak to the risks. Then there's also the root causes analysis. Okay, this is a method that is used to determine a problem's primary cause, where you look at the during the root cause analysis, you look at the problem, you collect data, determine the causal factors. Yeah. You also determine the factors that are root causes, which are symptoms, then identify actions for correction, etc. Okay. Employee feedback is another source of risks. Okay, especially internal, what the your team, your project team, if they're at risk, it will obviously affect your project also. So employees can also be able to speak to risks, and you can imagine those who are probably traveling, traveling to project places, injuries that can be experienced, those who are operating machines, you know. So from a perspective of employees, you can also capture risks which may affect project progress. You can also do an assumption analysis. You remember in the logical framework, the assumptions. You can analyze those assumptions and just see which ones may not come to pass. That could be the reason. The risk could be the reason why. If you assume that the economy, for example, will be stable, the risk could be that the prices, may shoot up, for example. Okay. So assumptions are also another place where you can identify the risks. Then usually, in most projects, there's what we call a risk register. Okay. So during project planning, there'll normally be a risk. I think we stumbled on this earlier in one of the conversations. So you need to consult the risk register to be able to understand the type of risk, and keep updating it. Decision tree is another process through which you can understand the risks. Yeah. And a decision tree usually is a diagram that you can use to clarify and solve a problem. And as you do that, in between, you can be able to isolate factors that may inhibit or may inhibit certain decisions to be made, therefore helping to decide on the options that may be available. And that will be because of the risks that you may therefore discern. So the decision tree represents a possible decision or event, and at the same time depicts possible outcomes. So this approach allows you to visualize the relationship between various events and consider the possible advantages and disadvantages before taking a risk. Monte Carlo analysis is a computer modeling technique, which I think in normal operations in the physical projects that we do, this might not be, but it just would be good to be aware that there's mathematical modeling which can be used to to detect risks based on probability and impact. So how do you measure and assess risks? Okay. Once you have identified the risk, then you need to measure it. Otherwise, if you're not able to measure it, you cannot control it. Yeah. So risks must be measured and assessed in terms of how much it can affect the project. Yeah. And because of the way these are now inevitably affecting management of projects, there is need for what we call a risk management plan. Okay. A risk management plan is based on a risk assessment so that you know what the risk is, what it is, and maybe come up with a proposal on how to control it. Yeah. So risk assessment is identifying, assessing, and controlling the hazards and risks in a systematic process. Okay. And determining which safeguards are in place. Okay. When you have identify a risk, then you must come up with a safeguard. Otherwise, what's the point knowing that there is a risk and you assess it? It must be accompanied by a safeguard decision or action. I mean, if, for example, you believe that one of the risks to the staff, for example, may be, especially maybe if they're traveling a lot, or if there are constructions that are being, a project can be also made up of construction, be it a road or whatever, dam, you need safeguards or preventive mechanisms which can then speak to the management decision to avoid. We'll let us see the mechanisms or the strategies that can be used during risk mitigation. So why do we need to manage risk? Okay, this is because it allows us to be able to identify the risks in the first place, categorize the risks, prioritize and mitigate in order to avoid risks that may be able to affect the progress of the project. So risk assessment is a step towards risk management. By assessing or identifying the risks is a step towards managing the risks. So you have to start by at the level of identifying and finding out how impactful that particular risk can be. Yeah. And by the way, in any project, there probably it's good to be making this clear. Risk assessment is not a project's sole responsibility. So it's everybody in it. It's not just it's not like an accountant who sits somewhere and looks at the figures. This is a responsibility that must be seen to be for all in a given project. A special meeting can be conducted, by the way, in order to get ideas from the members, and that can involve the chair of the team, which is the project manager. It involves the team, okay, and the members. Then it also involves the key stakeholders, okay. Then some special matter experts must be part of the whole thing, and maybe also the sponsor, because sometimes, not sometimes, always, risk plan will require certain costs to be associated with it, and therefore involvement or familiarity of the donor or the sponsor is important, because the risks do not directly contribute to it's the mitigation part that is important, but they are not directly related to the achievements. You're simply dealing with what will stop you from achieving. Yeah. So in other words, it might not easily be something that you want to flag out that's clear and therefore needs a budget. It's got to be justified in a very contextualized manner, and everybody should be part and be familiar and be involved in risk identification, risk assessment, and mitigation or safeguards. So what's the risk identification? It's just listing of the risks, all right? Through whichever means that you want to, you know, you want to use. You remember we said it could be risk can be done using these various methods. So risk identification is where you, whichever way, whichever method that you use, you bring out or identify, isolate, depending on the project, some of the critical critical risks that will affect your ability to achieve. And how to manage the risks, again, this is managing a risk really is first embraced identification. Okay, so the first aspect of risk management is identification of that particular risk, agreeing and seeing that this is a risky aspect of this initiative and this needs to be done. Okay, and managing a risk must first be able to be aligned to the project's vision, yeah, objectives, the scope, and deliverables that are expected. Yeah. And when you do that, then you'll find that at the vision level, there'll be certain risks. At the objective level, there'll be certain risks. At scope level, there'll be certain risks. And then at deliverable level. Obviously, most of the risks will be found at the scope level. So having periodic meetings is important when it comes to managing the risks. Maybe you need to do the tracking, and if possible, you need to come up with a risk management strategy. And based on that, you need to have a periodic meeting of the team to review the risk aspect. What are some of the examples of risk assessment, right? An example can be of health and safety risk assessment. You can focus on issues of health, okay, and safety. You can also workplace risk assessment can also be done as an example. Yeah. Then you can also a full risk assessment, especially where you're looking at nursing or a health staff, okay, handling delicate, what do you say, delicate patients, okay. Okay, at this stage, it may sound very, very ordinary, but there are people who have fallen, and they have received lifelong disabilities. Okay. And this is especially in the hospital where you are handling, or even care homes, including us who probably handle our elderly parents. Yeah. Remember, they can fall, even just in the house. So avoiding doing certain mitigation arrangements that can lead to, can minimize falling. It sounds so ordinary, but I can assure you, fall is one aspect of risk that's very much associated with the elderly persons. Of course, at construction sites, You know, big construction sites, you've heard of places where people have died, people have fallen off from buildings. And you know, in projects, all these things do happen. In projects, we all have these typical examples, depending on what you're doing. You know, health, even there is water and sanitation, safeguards or mitigation strategies that will guarantee safety. Okay. How do you measure or assess risk? Of course, we've seen there are various tools. Okay, there's a risk matrix that is very common, where you draw the columns and rows so that you compare. Then there's of course the decision tree, which we have seen earlier. And what are some of the phases or stages of risk assessment? Okay, because risk assessment is how you understand a risk, common phases, the different stages. How you understand a risk is informs on how you mitigate against it. Okay. In many projects, risks are identified and analyzed in a random brainstorming fashion, but this is often fatal to the success of the project, as unexplained risks arise which have not been assessed or planned for and have to be dealt with on an emergency basis rather than being prepared for and defended against in a planned, measured manner. So, assessment prepares you or prepares a project or an organization to be able to deal with risks. Often, these risks need to be identified, categorized, evaluated, and documented, and that's how you get to be able to mitigate against them. But for you to manage risks successfully, then there and come up with the safeguards that can guarantee success in terms of mitigation and project implementation, then therefore we follow these steps. Okay, follow these different steps which can be used. The first step is to determine the dangers. Okay, of this first step of risk assessment is to determine the dangers. Okay, because finding possible risks have a negative impact on the ability to conduct business in the first stage in a risk assessment process. So determining the dangers or what the risks are is the first stage. Yeah. Step two, you ascertain who or what might be affected. So once you have identified the risk, whichever method you use, then there's need to know who or what might be affected. And then step three is to assess the hazards and create preventive measures. So once you have ascertained who might be affected, then you understand the hazards or the negative impact. And based on that, you can then come up with the preventive measures. Number four, make a record of your findings. So whatever that you find out, you put it into documentation, all right? And at least let it be there to inform, the management currently and future on what are the prospective risks and the safeguards or the strategies for avoiding them. Then the last step is conducting a frequent review and updating the risk assessment. So you need to do that maybe on a yearly basis to just, because things change. They're never static. Yeah, so you start implementing and also reviewing the risk assessment report. So documentation of risks is important because it provides a basis of how management can keep track of what's happening and make sure that the risks do not end up affecting the plans of the project implementation. Now, the document that is formed out of the risk assessment is usually attached to the appendix of the project management plan. So that it becomes part of it informs some of the decisions that are taken during the course of the project implementation. Now, managing risk with a project manager. A project manager is a software that has been used to manage project implementation based on computer softwares. So, a project manager as a software has a risk tracking template. All right. So you have all the lists, the list of all the risks, and then it tracks, and then if once you update it, it keeps updating the status of the risks. So it's sort of it's a management tool that is used to keep track of the risks in a given project by just updating it with information from time to time, and then it updates itself. It is a very effective way of doing it because then the manager is on top of things, if you will. Yeah, it allows the manager to manage risks at every step of the project. Now, talking about risk mitigation, it's really a process of minimizing risk exposure and reducing the likelihood of an event to occur. Yeah. So once you identify and document the risk, then you must come up with a mitigation process that minimizes the risk of exposure and reduces the likelihood of an event to occur. And therefore, the goal of risk mitigation is to prepare for and lessen the effects of the risk or the threat. Project management stages like execution and risk management are also very, very important when it comes to implementing the risk mitigation stages. Even also the project planning stage is crucial when it comes to risk mitigation because it helps to identify potential risks early during planning and come up with ways to manage them. Establishing milestones in project management, of course, also helps in identifying and ensuring that the risks associated with a project are actually dealt with. I think before we look at the types of risks, I would like to find out, Mutiso, I can see you're there. Anything you do on risk, what is it that you do on risks? Mutiso? In your project, Mtiso, what risks have you identified and how have you planned to mitigate against them? This silence is yeah.
Maybe just something that would be
Yes.
practical to our ministries. Okay, I know we have our ministries have got risk management framework where they've listed a number of them and the mitigation strategy and who will do what and that. One practical one, I think we have safeguarding officers here. We take safeguarding very, very seriously in everything that we do in our ministries. Therefore, it is ideally required that before any activity is implemented, there has to be some kind of risk assessment and maybe try to preempt the certain risks that are likely to occur. Then after that, you put the mitigation steps that will be undertaken to ensure that they don't occur. So that is something practical that every project, especially under Edmund Rice mission, has to do in every activities that they do. So it's a daily thing. And one of the things also that I find challenging is that, okay, sometimes we come up with a risk framework when we are making strategic plan. And maybe the strategic plan is to take 5 years. So after 5 years, you realize that, okay, the project still has got the same risk. So it poses the challenge that, okay, are the projects making effort towards maybe mitigating this risk? Or is it that there are no new emerging risks? So sometimes once we make the risk framework, then we keep it somewhere in the shelf, and maybe we'll look at it again when we are making another strategic plan.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother Paul. You know, the idea of strategic planning in project management is not very old, and I know in business that's where the strategic planning came from. It was first it's still being used in most of the intelligence in military is based on a strategic plan, and it has taken roots in business because you know business it's about competition and you must position yourself. So the idea of strategic planning became very robust within the business circles. But it has now been found that strategic planning is actually important in all types of management, including project management. And that's why Brother Paul now and others can talk about strategic plan in projects. I can tell you that those who have in project management adopted strategic planning, I think have realized better success than those who don't. And you know, the world has become, especially in the new millennium, the world has also become very complicated and you just need to be smart, as they say. And as a project, if you want to remain relevant, because projects they do exist to deal with problems of society, and problems of society seem to increase on daily basis. and hence the concept of strategic planning is something that will continue to be embraced, I think, perhaps in a better and better way. It appears also that a number of projects in the past have actually used strategic planning, but they have not used it in managing the projects. And I think that's where probably JP is coming from. But again, given that it's a practice that has just been picked up, I can dare say that the future project practitioners will just have to be strategic thinkers because the world has become very complicated. And to adopt a strategic planning perspective in management, it's why, brother, you see in projects at strategic planning stage, we have the risk management plan, but I think it is not come to reality. In business, it is now informing business decisions because you see, in business, success is like what makes a business to exist. There's no business that can exist if it's not succeeding. Therefore, their decisions are anchored on strategic thinking, which now I think is picked up also in project management. And I can only tell you, Brother Paul, that having a risk management plan is a good thing. But I think now we need to move to the next level. I've just mentioned in this that the manager of the program or the project must be in tandem and be assessing the project risks as often as possible. Yeah, through meetings, and ensuring that you keep track, okay, of what's happening. The good news, we now hear of safeguard officers. And I think in the last 10 years, I can say the European Union, the World Bank, who are the major socioeconomic partners in most of the developing countries, have insisted. Yeah, in fact, if you work with the EU, they'll give you even a budget to ensure that you have a safeguard officer. Okay. The same for World Bank and other. So it becomes something that is now highly recommended. And I think of course, when it started, officers were being asked to take charge of that part. Yeah, and that I've experienced myself. When I was working with the EU, we did not employ somebody to do safeguards, but one of the officers will be allocated to do that. But now, 5 years or so ago, they are insisting on an officer, and calling them safeguards is a way. Safeguard is a way of saying, a direct way of speaking to risk. And they're given jobs, they're given JD's job descriptions that deal with that. Of course, where sometimes that's not possible, then these safeguard officers have also either been supported or worked with the external consultants in order to just bring in the perspective, because it appears risk is not inherent, it's not inherently management, especially in project management, driven, but it needs to be, handled so. And the focus right now, I think the practice right now is to ensure that from the donor point of view, that risks are understood, they are assessed and planned for mitigation. And that's where now they feel the need for a safeguards officer whose job is to do that on a daily basis. So I think, Brother Paul, having a safeguard officer will now make sure that the frameworks, the risk management frameworks in the strategy plans are actually reviewed with the support of the management, are reviewed regularly as possible, depending on the nature of the program, so that we do not endanger. Safeguards are meant for both the beneficiaries and also the project management team. In a way, some donors actually are doing it as a condition to their involvement. I know World Bank is doing that, EU is doing that, and most of the, and you know what the World Bank and EU and other big boards do is followed by the smaller ones. So you find that even others are also following suit to follow up on this issue. So it's good that we are talking about it, and I hope in this meeting, in this lesson, we are now making, and I'm happy John Paul is here. We are now seeing the necessity of managing our risks, the necessity of dealing with our risk mitigation plans that we have. To limit the dangers that come with not focusing on this. I think we are doing well at the awareness level. I think we are slowly moving to the, now that I hear of safeguards here and there, we are now moving to the next level of implementation. We are aware, we are now planning, but I think where we are struggling a lot, and I think JP alluded to it, is where we seem not to be doing what we have planned to do on matters risk. Allow me, unless somebody has a burning question, allow me to take you to the next stage about risks, so that maybe this might also help to explain, that we have different types of risks, so that we know which risks we want to deal with. If you understand what type of risk you're dealing with, the chances are that you'll succeed. Okay. So I hope this talks to Brother Paul's concern. Maybe if we knew what type of risk we're dealing with, we'll easily implement them than when we just know them as risks. Number one, we have what we call strategic risks. All right. Now, strategic risks are those risks that are beyond our control and influencing our future direction. Okay. Most organizations are dealing with issues of competitive pressure, technological variations, economic changes, and regulatory alterations as well. So for us to be able to deal with this, we have what we call project templates, which help in identifying and dealing with strategic risks, so that strategic risks are those that affect the higher aspects of a project, like the goal and the objectives. So any risks that will affect our goals are strategic in nature. Yeah, and you can see the officer on the ground cannot deal with those risks, because these are risks that are affecting on the project goal and objectives, and maybe outcomes. So those are strategic in the sense that it's the management, high up management, that is likely to handle those. You don't expect a project officer to deal with the strategic risk unless it's on instructions of the executive or the manager of the program. Operational risks are those risks that now speak to what we are doing on the ground. Okay. So you can ask your manager or your person in the field to deal with those risks in terms of operations. Okay. You're dealing with things like system failure, you're dealing with things like security in the field, you're dealing with, many. Others are financial risks, they speak to issues of finance. And finance is key when it comes to project implementation. And therefore, financial risks must be mitigated. Otherwise, if a project runs into financial problems, it will obviously not move. Compliance risks, yeah. Every project has certain compliance in terms of best practices. So we must ensure that we comply. And if there are risks that will make us not to comply, then they are going to contribute to the organization's failure. So compliance risk. Then we have the reputational risk. Yes, again, this is about the reputation of the organization, yeah, which can affect the way the organization is viewed, or the way the project is viewed. And this is a lot of times about communication, what is said about what's happening in the project. All right. Having said that, then what are some of the common mitigation strategies that are used to deal with different types of risks? We have the first one, which is avoidance. Okay, so there's a way you can deal with a risk by just ensuring that you don't get yourself to be affected by that. So that can be done so that you avoid the activity. The other one is reduction. You reduce involvement, and that might impact on the ability to control procedure or save. It minimizes the risk, the likelihood or impact of the risk through controls, through procedures, or even safeguards. Yeah. Transference is a way that you use so that you're able to pass on to that. For example, if you adopt an insurance, then the risk is actually transferred to somebody else to deal with it. So you can, depending on the risk, you can transfer it if it's possible. Then the other one is to accept, all right? As a strategy, you accept that this is a risk that I'm going to deal with, and you just have to let it come and deal with it. You've heard about let's cross the bridge when we get there. So it's likely to be a risk that it's probably not, it's very far beyond your control, anybody's control. The other one is to monitor. You continuously monitor the risks to ensure that mitigation strategies remain effective over time. Yeah. Yeah. So that's another option or a strategy. And I think it's a common one that is applied in projects. Monitor and ensure that the risk is understood and made to be reduced in real time. Yeah. So, what are the steps that you need to take in order to successfully mitigate against a risk? What are the strategies? 5 steps that you need to use either of these to manage the risk. One, you identify all the risks. Yeah. Sorry. You identify all the risks as a first step. Okay. Then you conduct a risk assessment, analyze the impact of the risk, how much or how big, how impactful it will be, and then prioritize risks based on potential impact. Then once you have all the risks, then you can once you have all the risks, you assess them. Then the next stage is to prioritize, and that helps you now in ensuring that you actually do something. If you don't do that, that's why I think, like JP said, we look like we have them, but we are doing nothing. I think it's lack of ability to contextualize issues in this way, that you start by identifying, conduct assessment, and prioritize. If you prioritize, you are likely to find a way of saying it needs to be done. Then you monitor the risk with the time, and then you implement the risk mitigation plan. Yeah. So you develop and implement a risk development mitigation plan to address the prioritized risks. Okay. So you need to include specific strategies and actions to reduce the likelihood and impact of risks, and consider options like risk avoidance, the ones that we just said, reduction, sharing, and acceptance. Right. Before we go to the final part, which is reporting, so that now we know that we have done it. Let me speak to Brother Paul. Up to where we have reached, where do you think this is a problem? Where do you think the problem lies when it comes to risk management?
I think in some cases we just identify risk because maybe the donor want us to have a risk management framework. But after that, you may realize that, okay, those risks just remain on paper, unless it is the element of practical risk, like around safeguarding, which are some of the things that are monitored. Okay, when you're doing monitoring for safeguarding, you want to see the evidence that actually the project is doing a risk assessment and documentation is being done. But apart from that, okay, some of the other risk we tend to ignore.
Let me ask you, brother. We do very well, and you're right. A lot of times the risks, and it's interesting that the risk you are being asked to evaluate will actually affect you, not even the donor. And yet, you get what I mean? The donor reminds you that you have some risks around you. You need to understand them and plan for them. And when we get them, we seem to still think that it's the donor, and yet the person who is going to be affected by those risks is ourselves.
Maybe
that appears to be a contradiction.
Yeah, I can also comment kidogo.
Oh yes, please. Yes, please.
Actually, I've been working on a risk framework for an organization, and it's a bit of challenging. The 4 steps of identification, assessment, monitoring, and taking action, those are very clear. Now, the organizational context is very clear because you can look at personal factors, the economy, the legal, and all that. But when it comes to internal context, one of the challenges I got is what framework to use for internal context assessment. And for non-profits, in business, you can talk of the McKinsey 7s to do the internal capacity assessment or the dashboard. But there's no agreed framework for looking at internal risks. So that was a challenge. The other challenge was, yes, as John Paul says, we can identify there's a governance gap, there's a organization project design gap, there's finance gap in managing finances, there's reporting gap. It's very easy to do assessment. Now, the response to a risk depends on your assessment. Now, the impact and the probability, that measurement part, we have no capacity. In fact, even the leadership, you tell them what is the score for weak finances, for example, so that you can design a mitigation plan. There's nothing. So it's really something gray. And I've had the privilege to see some of the reports given to donors in applications. Like one of our partners, they ask you, what is your risk plan? We intend to make sure we do things in a better way. We will make sure we don't lose money. Those are the things we write, but there's no concrete plan.
Hello?
Joshua must be in
Joshua?
South Sudan. His network is
Yeah,
fluctuating.
sorry. I think he has brought in a very good real life perspective.
Yeah.
And I think, is he back?
Are you
Yes,
back,
yes.
Joshua?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, we didn't hear your last part, your last submission.
Yeah, I'm saying it's not easy. Beyond identifying, it's not easy to move forward and have a concrete plan.
You seem now to have converged with Paul.
Yeah.
Where, this is where we reach the implementation plan, mitigation plan. I think there's more unpacking that needs to be done. If you look at most of the project proposals and strategic plans of projects, they usually have the risk management matrix at the back of the document, which identifies the risk and the nature of the risk and its implication to the project and control measure. That's usually very standard. But I think translating that into practical action is perhaps where the missing link is. But I must say that we have reached there. That's good. So the matrix needs just the way the way we do the project planning based on our logical framework. So we need to, during planning, also use this risk mitigation framework to now come up with concrete activities. And I think the idea of having safeguards came in so that that will be the focus of that officer, the safeguards. So it's how then do we move from, how do we link? And in any case, you see, remember, risk is just an enabler. But the real thing is in the project, and that's where we take most of our time. All right? The real substantive reason for existence is to ensure that the project objective is achieved or attained. But risk can make that problem not to be, and that objective not to be achieved. But we seem to forget and put all the effort in getting and not seeing how the risk either making it hard or impossible for us to achieve. And that's the convergence that we now need. All right. You have a plan, but how do you ensure that this plan speaks to the major, it's important, but the major project planning schedules, so that they are both implemented concurrently. And that's where safeguarding planning and the staff come in. That said, I think none of you might be able to tell us that there has been a risk report and monitoring. And, risk reporting and monitoring means you have a plan which you are implementing. You get? So if you don't have a plan that's implementable, you are not likely to give us a report. So that safeguarding must be, unfortunately, I don't know whether, Paul, this has come to pass to you. Most of the safeguards officers that are employed actually almost redeployed. They're given other duties, and yet they're called safeguards, safeguard officers. But they find themselves doing monitoring and doing other normal project management activities without focusing on on the risk management plan. And I think that happens because of lack of clarity and also perhaps lack of understanding. That's why it's very easy for them to find themselves doing other things rather than what they are supposed to do. Because if they were able to interpret the risk management plan and put it in action, they should be busy telling us what is happening through report writing and monitoring. Yeah. So
another factor is maybe funding. Okay, some of our donors would say, okay, but safeguarding maybe is not a full-time job, therefore it is an added responsibility. But in most cases, you realize that, okay, it entails a lot, but it just requires to be independent, you know. So sometimes because of lack of resources, it is shared with other responsibilities.
Yeah, that's true, Paul. That's true, brother. Of course, it all depends on the scope of the project. But I think even if one was to digress, if I was to use that word, let them know that their substantive role is safeguarding. And let them be able to be enabled to see their role. I think a lot of times they are not able to, maybe even the managers themselves, a manager is in charge of the project. If he is struggling to understand what this is all about, his safeguard officer will not, because they are supposed to work under him or her. But as I said, it's not. This is a new perspective to, and safeguard is not standard. It's just about risks which are different from organization to organization. So the safeguard officer in Project A may not be dealing with the same issues as the safeguards officer in Project B. Yeah. In some cases, safeguards are focusing on gender, for example. Theirs is to ensure that women are enabled to participate, because without doing that, it's affecting the attainment of project objectives. So the way to get the safeguard officer to see their value is for them to report, monitor and report in spite of other things they may be given, but they should be giving us regular reports on safeguards. And if they do that, then they will have understood what they're supposed to do. You see, if you don't understand what you're supposed to do, you can't do a report. So what is the report, risk reporting? It really is about communicating the real time. You remember? Real time risk and performance data to the different stakeholders. And the monitoring, which informs reporting, is a continuous activity that results in the awareness of what is actually happening across the different parts of the project or organization. Therefore, when you have monitoring being undertaken in a given project, then you will then identify critical trends, respond to appropriate and efficient manner, and you are also able to spot opportunities for the projects, because the projects always have opportunities that they can exploit. So without a proper implementation plan, the reporting will not be possible, and therefore we will not be able to explain what's going on. Let me talk the last one. I think someone will try to allude to it, governance. Okay. Governance. Risk governance means how is the governance used to ensure that the relevant actions are taken to ensure that the risks are avoided. Okay. So governance, as we all know, refers to actions, also processes, traditions, and institutions by which authority is exercised and decisions are taken and implemented. So risk governance applies to principles of good governance, to identification, assessment, management, and communication of risk. So the whole of that process we've talked about in terms of the process of managing risks has to be done in a manner that speaks to good governance. And it addresses very many questions, all right? How to improve the contribution of science, for example, to related policy making, do organizations and people at risk understand the hazards and its consequences? All those are some of the questions that need to be addressed if you are to be able to practice good governance. Okay, what are the secondary impacts of risk and how it is managed, and this, etc. Those are different questions that you can use to promote good governance. So without good governance, risk management becomes a challenge. I want us to end by one. Today we have stretched it a bit more. Sorry about that. Then there is the challenges of risk governance in today's world. Yeah, there are many, many challenges. It's not easy. In the world of continuing and fast-paced technological changes, all right? That is also creating new forms of risks. So technology basically is now driving the world, and that is also affecting the way risk is governed across the world. Today, look at things like climate change, biodiversity loss, the artificial intelligence, all those issues play out at the global stage. All right, and they portend risk. Regimes for different places. Climate change, it's a risky concept. Biodiversity, artificial, all these things are informing the current global dynamics, and that has affected the way risks are actually perceived today. Right. We have 5 minutes to go. Okay. Any question or comments? I think we all must attempt to see risks in our project context and come up with clear plans that can help us to report where we are. And as we do that, we need to remind ourselves to practice good governance. Okay, any question? Comments? So, Brother Paul.
Hello, Mwalimu.
Yes, please.
Hello, teacher.
Yes?
Yeah, it's just a compliment. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And especially for the types of risk assessments. Those notes, those slides will be of great importance, especially to somebody like me. So I just wanted to say thank you. We are really benefiting. So when you see people quiet, just know that something is happening, something good is happening. And people like me, actually, I'm happy. Thank you.
Most welcome, Joseph. And you will get the slides for the two in the course of today, hopefully, so that you can reinforce your understanding.
Yes.
Of this concept. I also want to, before I hand over to Paul, to apologize that we've really handled many things today because of what happened last week, but I hope it has worked. So out of the 15, we now have 2 to go. All right, we had 15 lessons. So we have our next module will be about impact evaluation, right? And then our final one will be about learning in M&E. So we thank God this far that we are going, God willing, we are going to finish as per plan, which we thank God for. So thank you everyone for your time, for stretching it up to this time. And God willing, look forward to seeing you guys next week as we take to the home stretch. So, Brother Paul, I wish to kindly hand back to you and probably get someone to really close for us with a word of prayer.
Thank you, Dr. Ari, for the insightful presentation. I think it was well done. And also to the participants for really sacrificing your time up to almost 1. Okay, I think today we had a very good number. The past 2 sessions, we could hardly reach 10. So I want to thank you. We understand your commitment in your various ministries. And also this training has been a long one because we didn't just want to invite a few people to Nairobi, then they have it for 2 days, then that's it. But we wanted to develop it progressively, and that's why we invited not just the key people in the management of the projects, but also the safeguarding officers, because every department needs to be complemented in M&E, because it doesn't just focus on programs, but also issues of safeguard are very key. Therefore, I'm grateful. And also we have our partner organizations that we invited. So it will be good that as we learn here, our key takeaways, how are we going to put those into practice, trying to reach out to other programs, to learn about the best practices that they are putting forward, because what will be key is not just the knowledge that you've received, but as we will be reading your reports, the element of M&E will be that which is enhanced, because without that, we cannot actually measure the outcomes, and therefore, even the M&E report cannot inform the kind of projects or programs that we want to pursue beyond what we are doing currently. So please, as we wind up, it is good to start thinking of, okay, what do we want to do differently from what we've learned? And also, we are here with the Daktari and also the mission office role is to build people's capacity, but the initiative has to come from projects. There are areas of gaps. Then we bring our heads together, how we can ensure that we improve, because in today's world, the programs or projects that continue to get funding are those that are able to keep up with the best practices that are required. Yeah, so we need to do our best and to ensure that, okay, wherever we have gaps, we're able to ensure that our capacities are built so that we move forward in a way that will be good for our mission together. So after that, Mark, can you pray for us? Mark Obuya from Enuka. Can you unmute and pray for us?
Yes, please, I can pray.
You can also
Yes,
pray for
please.
food in case it's ready for some people.
Yeah, I can pray now. Thank you, thank you. Our Heavenly Father, we do glorify your name, Father Lord, for the Father, Lord, you brought us, oh Father Lord, and we ask you, Father Lord, whatever we are getting from this education, Father Lord, we pray, may you help us, oh Father Lord, to put it into practice, Father Lord, and to deliver it, Father Lord, where it's supposed to be. Father, we thank you, we give you all the glory, in Jesus' name we pray and believe. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, I forgot something. We are working on the certificates, and therefore, in case maybe I don't have your full name, you can reach out to me. Okay, thank you. Lisa is having the what in the background? That is Ikuti, Tabitha.
Yes,
You're having a Sikuti.
the choir are practicing for the county festivals.
Oh, okay.
Yes.